very helpfully, we get sort of a academic insight to try and break down some of those misunderstandings and those, frankly, the rubbish that is spread and put across about what it means to actually belong to religion and to get beyond the stereotype.
So they were actually starting to study their religion on an independent way.
I went, I searched, I found, I went to every mosque, I went to every piece of literature. 750 million Muslim women in the world. What can me, one person sitting in New York, do? The suffrage movement, the abolitionist movement, the civil rights movement, women were at the front and center. For us to ignore religion is to ignore that very impulse that motivates people.
Basic issues to do with faith and the nature of human beings and God and modern society, all of these things need to be discussed and sorted out. You know, Western Muslims, us, including many converts, insisting that we have to stick to the old rules in Morocco, whereas the people of Morocco have actually moved on. You don't need individual ayat or hadith, or analogy, qiyas, or some sophisticated argument from law to promote basic goodness, to work for human rights, or speak out against injustice. You don't need to be a scholar or have studied for years. You just need a basic sense of right and wrong, and stand up.
So many Muslim women are denied even the most basic of rights. Half the women in the Arab world are illiterate. The entire discourse on Muslim women in theology has been reduced to two mere issues: the way she dresses and the absolute nature of her private role and the discouragement of her public life. We need to reclaim the innovative message that the Prophet brought that showed respect, equality and human dignity to women. These are issues that affect all of us as one human race.
Because our masjid is amazing. We have a brilliant imam.
Good.
And if he's not bleating on about women's rights in his khutbahs, he's talking about the environment.
I don't want younger girls to feel like they can't do what they want to do just because of gender inequality.
Mm.
My life changed in, I think, the time it takes to do that. I don't only talk about peace, I talk about humanity, and I talk about unconditional love. For me, it's not about being Muslim, non-Muslim, and it is about what we do collectively in the world to address when there is such great injustice.
For me, the differences dissolve very quickly when I look at another person from the same vantage point that I look at myself, which is that I'm simply a breath of the divine.
It's being brave and strong enough to challenge the status quo.
This is from Tafsir Imam Tabari, one of the great authorities of Tafsir, which is that a couple had an argument and the husband slapped his wife. She claimed to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet said, qisas, retaliation. In other words, slap him back. Okay? Another woman complained to the Prophet that her husband would beat her, so he forbade wife beating. He said, do not beat your wife. Well, I think we're forced to come to this conclusion, which is that wife beating is totally absent from and opposed to the Prophet's sunnah, right? Quite clear from the first hadith. Secondly, from several hadith, it's quite clear that the Prophet ﷺ wished to ban domestic violence from the Muslim community completely and immediately. That's clear what he wanted to do.
Lale Bakhtiyar, who's also an Islamic scholar in her own right, according to her, she went to 30 scholars and she asked 3 questions. She said, number 1, did the Prophet fulfill every commandment in the Quran? And all the scholars said, absolutely. She said, because they said he was the walking Quran. Did the Prophet ever beat his wife? No. Okay, 3rd question. What did the Prophet do when he was angry with his wives or there was a domestic dispute? And they said, well, he usually went away. She said, because, now correct me if I'm wrong, the word daraba also means go away. In the Quran it is used as also go away. And there are like more than 40 instances where the word daraba has been used. And in this case it has always been translated as beat and not go away. So she said, according to the sunnah of the Prophet and according to my understanding and according to the 4 steps that you even see in all 4 steps, the logical answer is that when a man gets angry, he leaves her bed and then, he admonishes her. The logical thing is not to beat her, is to just leave the house. It makes more sense, right? That's what people do. They get so fed up, they just slam the door and they leave. She said that's what it is. So
it's well known, in some circles at least, that Hazrat Aisha often criticized other male companions for narrating hadith. She said, this is completely wrong, you've got it out of context. This is not what the Prophet said, or did, or was like. I knew better. Imam Zarkashi, who was 8th century Hijri, he wrote a whole book called The Compendium of Aisha's Criticisms of Other Companions when it came to hadith. You see, and there's dozens of companions she critiqued, including Umar, Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Mas'ud, a long list of many companions. So for example, very quickly, Abdullah bin Umar narrated a hadith that the Prophet said that if you cry at a grave, the dead person in the grave is punished for your wailing over them. And Hazrat Aisha said, it doesn't make any sense. It's not their fault you're crying over the grave. He was actually talking about a wicked person who is being punished in their grave, and their relatives are crying over them. And Abdullah bin Umar, you heard the hadith wrong and you misunderstood it. And there are many other hadith. So that rationality, she subjected her logic to those hadith. That needs to be done more, because
by doing a few small things each, it can build up to make a great impact so that the future generation do not have to suffer the things that the past and present have. We can ensure a better quality of life for Muslim women all around the world if we just let out the passion that we have for creating a better environment for the women in our community.
The scale tips higher.